Hello and welcome to the Warehouse Podcast. My name is Tyler, and boy, am I excited to actually have a positive episode for you guys this week or this time. How do you know it's a positive episode? Well, I'm not recording it from my car in a Starbucks parking lot because I'm at my desk. I've got a proper microphone. I don't know if it sounds any better, but I know I'm much more excited to talk about the Baltimore Orioles this time than I have been for 3 months, maybe 2 months, because that first month I kind of cut them some slack. But we've got positive news about the Baltimore Orioles to talk about, and that is that they have finally graciously clinched a playoff berth with, technically, as I record this, the ability to still win the AL East with 5 games remaining. They're 5 games back in the playoff race, or in the AL East race with the Yankees. Now they won the first game of that Yankees series today. They now have the season series over the Yankees. If they win out, the Yankees lose out, the Orioles would be AL East champions. Is that going to happen? Almost certainly not. But the fact that they're still in it the last week of the season, despite being atrocious for 3 months, at least is a testament to the first half of the season where they were so good. Now, before we get into that, let's get some business taken care of. Let's get the ad read done for our sponsor of this episode. And that sponsor is, as it has been for much of the season, Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. It's fall, football is in the air. Also, playoff baseball you can do on Bet Online. But for this ad read, we are talking about football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online. The game starts here, and good luck to the Nationals podcast doing that ad read this week. All right, moving on to the Baltimore Orioles, because that is the topic of this podcast. Yes, they are into the playoffs for the 2024 season. It's felt like a battle for the last couple months here. They were so good in the first half of the year, so bad in the second half of the year. But when it all shakes out, they are going to the playoffs. In all likelihood, they will be the number one wild card, which means they get to host the first round of the playoffs. It's a best of three. They will host all 3 games if it goes that far, or at least 2 games, hopefully, if they sweep whomever it is that they play, which the last series of the season here against the Twins could matter a lot in that regard. But we're not really going to get into that too much. We're going to focus on the Orioles here. So they make the playoffs. I want to try to stay positive with this. September has been a tough month for the Baltimore Orioles. I was looking at this just before I got on here. They are 9-11 in the month of September, which, certainly not a disastrous month, but I'm looking at on my screen here the splits, the month by month splits of the Orioles season. 2-1 in March, 17-9 in April, 17-9 in May, 17-12 in June. That's where they were really hot to start June and then fell apart in the second half of June. 12-13 in July, 13-15 in August, 9-11 so far in September. I think July, August, September, what that kind of shows me is, you know, this Orioles team has not at any single point been a disaster. They have always kind of, they've at least limped along and managed to be competitive day to day. They didn't go, 5-20 in a month. They were 12-13, 13-15, 9-11, just below 500 for the last 3 months. Now, this is a playoff team. You can't be, well, you can, but you really shouldn't be a sub 500 team going to the playoffs. You need to be much better than that. And they just haven't been that for a while. But it does feel like things are turning a little bit in a positive direction for the Baltimore Orioles. Now, why do I say that when coming into this episode, they had lost 2 of their last 3, and the only one they won was this last one we were recording. They hadn't won a series since the start of September when they played the White Sox. Look, things have not been great on paper for them, but they're getting healthier. They've got Jordan Westburg back. They've got Ramon Urias back. They've got Ryan Mountcastle back. The offense is really at full strength, apart from not having Jorge Mateo like on the bench as the utility piece. Apart from that, they've got it full strength, and I think they have, they've ebbed and flowed. They've worked through these tough stretches where they've had to start Jackson Holliday when he's pretty clearly not ready for a full-time role. He started off really well end of January, early August, and it just hasn't clicked together for him. Hopefully that changes next year, because it certainly seems like they have their lineup in place, which is going to be, Jordan Westbrook at second, Ramon Urias at third. Holiday will probably come in to pinch run or to, maybe defensive replacement in certain situations if other people are pinch hit for. But in general, they've kind of got that figured out. So it feels good to have the offense at least back in a healthy place. Also, looking at the run production recently, no, it's not spectacular, but over the last 5 games, they scored 5 runs, 7 runs, 4 runs, wah, 3 runs, wah, 5 runs. But they're consistently scoring 3 or more. They're scoring 5 or more in 3 of their last 5 games. That's the formula. You got to score 5 or more runs. I've been saying that for a long time. 5 is the magic number. If you think about, how you view starting pitchers, if they have a 4.5 ERA or better, I think positively about them. I don't know that you think a 4.5 ERA is an ace, of course, but it is a competitive, competent big league pitcher. Over 4.5, I think you're starting to get worried. So it makes sense then that at least for starting pitchers anyway, relief pitchers is a different deal, but it makes sense that 5 runs is kind of that magic number for not just the Orioles, but a lot of teams. If you score 5 runs, you're going to win most of your games. So that feels pretty good there. Also, on that same note, talk about the pitching recently. Just in the month of September, look at some of the numbers for these pitchers. Corbin Burnes has figured it out after a rough August, has a 1.08 ERA. Cade Povich has been really good lately, 3.27 ERA, 2.91 xFIP. Yennier Cano feels like the guy the Orioles are going to go to, maybe mid to late innings when they need an out, regardless of the situation at this point in the season. You want to win every game. Not so much in these last 5 games, but definitely in the postseason, you want to win every game. Cano's pitching like a guy you can use in most situations and feel good about it. Dean Kramer, 2.25 ERA in the month of September, looks pretty good in the first game of this Yankee series. I think in an ideal scenario, he's not starting a postseason game, but I feel like given where they are right now, Dean Kramer probably going to be your game 3 starter, unless an absolute miracle happens with Grayson Rodriguez, but that doesn't feel likely at this point. Zach Eflin, 2.49 ERA. Some of his peripherals aren't as lovely, but Eflin's a gamer. I think you feel pretty good of Burnes, Eflin, Kramer as your 1, 2, 3, Povich as sort of a bulk guy behind that. I think that feels pretty good. Sir Anthony Dominguez has not been as good lately, but the strikeout rates are good, 10.5 K per 9. Walks has upticked recently, 4.5 per 9. Home runs are his big issue, 1.5 home runs per 9 innings. It seems like he gives up a home run pretty much every other outing, which is certainly problematic for him, but has the big arm, gets the strikeouts. I think right now you feel pretty good about that. And they've started to get healthy in the bullpen too. Danny Coulombe's back. Jacob Webb is back. Birch Smith is now hurt, but he's been struggling anyway, so I'm not so sure he was making the postseason roster anyway. So we talked about the rotation there. Burnes, Eflin, Kramer is your 1, 2, 3. Povich kind of is your bulk guy. I think Suarez is your bulk guy. Or if you don't feel great about Kramer going through a lineup twice, you let him go through it once. Then you let Suarez come in, or maybe Povich, because you combine right with left, then you kind of get the handedness stuff out of the way with the opposition early. That's a play. Then in the bullpen, I think you feel pretty decent about Dominguez, even though the recent performance hasn't been fantastic. In general, his run with the Orioles has been positive. Cano, I feel pretty good about. He's been great all season. Keegan Aiken, we saw this early in the season with Aiken, really, really good early. Then Aiken struggled in the middle of the season, and now he's figuring out stuff towards the end of the season. To have a lefty that's striking out 13 guys per 9, walking fewer than 2 per 9. Again, this is not a fluke for Aiken. He's had these moments of brilliance, and if they can bottle it for, they bottle it for a couple weeks now, bottle it for the month of October, you feel pretty good about Aiken at the moment too. And then Coulombe, Webb. I think those are your big guys in the bullpen. I don't think you're going to really want Matt Bowman pitching too many innings in the postseason. Cionel Perez, I might even shy away from him unless it's like maybe the 4th or 5th inning. You need to get one out with guys on like 2nd and 3rd and Kramer's laboring or something. Maybe you go to Cionel Perez there. But I think in general, you want to stay away from him. Gregory Soto started to turn the corner a little bit. Maybe he's more of a secondary option. But that's kind of the pitching situation, and the positive of where the Orioles are in the standings now, where it's, yes, they could still win the division. I don't think the math is there for them to say we need to do everything we can to get every single out to win every game to, cling on to that minuscule percentage point chance that we win the division. You got to play it a little smarter. And because they are pretty much locked into that number 1 wild card seed, they can take these final 5 games of the season. Plus, they'll have a couple days layoff in between. I think I'll have to check this to be sure, but I think there's like 1 or 2 days in between the end of the season and the start of the playoffs to, account for if there was any sort of tiebreakers that needed to take place. The Orioles can line their pitching up. They can line it up so that Burns is pitching game one, Eflin game two, Kramer game three, if that's what they want to do. There's no reason for them to be out of whack when the postseason comes up. The only, not monkey wrench, but the only thing that could change here is if Grayson Rodriguez does get healthy enough to join the postseason roster. I don't think at this point you can say Grayson Rodriguez is going to start. I mean, start being that throw 5 or 6 innings in a game. I think you could put him on this roster and expect him to give you a Kevin Gossman 2014 postseason sort of role where he is a bullpen piece, but a premium talent out there that you can bring in for 2 or 3 innings in the middle of the game if you feel like you need to do that. I think if it's a game that maybe is out of hand a little bit, you could bring Rodriguez in to quiet things down, give the offense a chance to storm back, something like that. I don't know. I don't know what they've got envisioned for him. He's not even, really in the discussion just yet, but that's sort of the only other thing that could come in. And obviously, the pitching is not in a perfect situation. You would have loved to have Felix Bautista. You would have loved for Kyle Bradish to be healthy, John Means to be healthy, Tyler Wells to be healthy. You would have loved for Craig Kimbrell to not implode the way that he did in the second half of the season, but it is what it is. At least they faced the music there. He has gone. He wasn't going to make the postseason roster. And at least that clarifies things and allows things to fall into place there. So again, feeling good about the rotation, where it is given all the context that we have there. Offense trending in the right direction, starting to score 4 and 5 runs with more regularity than they were. You pair that with a pitching staff that has seemed to figure things out here lately. The Orioles feel like a team that can go into the postseason and compete. And, a third of the lineup now with Mountcastle, Urias, and Westberg is just coming back. So you would maybe hope in this final week they can get their stroke back a little bit to really be difference makers in the lineup. So again, I feel pretty decent about the lineup too, all things considered. Again, it's certainly not firing on all cylinders. Let's look at the batting numbers here now that I'm already on Fangraphs checking it out. In the month of September, I think I talked about this in my last episode, so I'm not going to belabor the point too much, but Gunnar continues to be really good, 184 WRC plus. Cedric's got it going on, 130 WRC plus. Colton Cowser, 123 WRC plus. Anthony Santander hit a home run yesterday. He's up to 44. I think he's got like the 7th most home runs in a single season in Orioles history, which is really crazy, and how he gets overshadowed nationally and I think even locally because Gunnar is so good and because the Orioles, at least for most of the season, were very deep. So Santander himself didn't stand out, even though he was an all-star this year, but he's up at 117 WRC plus. If he gets things going, sort of that power bat in the middle of the lineup, that's a big difference maker as well. Jordan Westberg has looked good early on. Ramon Urias picking kind of right up where he left off. I think he hit a home run in that game last night. That's been really encouraging. We'll see what Mountcastle gives. We'll see what Ryan O'Hearn can do. There's certainly some questions there. But again, I think the offense is at least trending in the right direction. Is it good enough for them to go on a deep run? I think they've got as good of a chance as anybody else. It's it's all there for the taking, not to steal an Aaron Booneism of it's right in front of us, but that kind of is how baseball works. The Orioles, I talk about this all the time with Mike Elias and how he builds out teams and how he views, a season it's a marathon, and he builds his teams to withstand attrition to the best of his ability. And they've done that. Now, they've taken their lumps. It has not been pretty for these last 3 months. I'm a big Orioles fan. I love to watch the games as much as possible. And there's definitely been stretches where I'm like, I need to take a break from these boys for a couple days because they're stressing me out, and I can't be, working a job and then in my entertainment time being stressed out minute to minute. And that's what the Orioles have done for me in the second half of the summer. And I've definitely stepped away from it from time to time because you gotta give some self-care. And the Orioles right now, we're not providing that to me. So you got to provide it to yourself. But they're locking me back in here for this last week. I feel positive about things. Love that they beat the Yankees. That's huge. They got 2 more games against them. Would love to sweep them, even if it means, really nothing in the standings. Love to sweep them. And then the Twins for the last series of the year. Again, a good team, a team that, their record is not quite as good against non-Chicago White Sox teams. They are the team that has benefited the most from that this year, but still has a lot of good pieces. So if you can end the season with good games against the Yankees, good games against the Twins, that feels pretty positive going into the postseason where you get to host a postseason series. Your pitching is set up, your offense is healthy. Look, if you can't win in that setup, then you weren't going to win anyway. So whether it's the wild card game or the wild card series or the division series, this is pretty much a perfect situation for the Orioles to be walking into in the postseason. Um, and what some people have said, well, what some people said last year was they didn't love winning the division, and this wasn't just the Orioles; it was a couple of other teams that have said that winning the division isn't as big of a boost as it should be because you get essentially a week off, and these teams that go to the wild card round get to take basically like the perfect like day or two off, and then they're right back into it. They don't get rusty. They can stay consistent with their swings, their routines, and they can take advantage of that, and then that enables them to go deeper into the playoffs than it does for these division winners, or not even division winners, top two seeds in each league. I don't know how much I buy into that, but if it's at all a psychological advantage for the Orioles to say, all right, cool, let's just keep this thing going that we got the ball rolling here a little bit. Let's keep it going. Let's get home, get some home cooking, and let's springboard from there. And I think if you win that wild card series, that is at least like mentally a big boost. You can say, wow, we have already won playoff games. We're going to go in against this team that's cold, that hasn't won any playoff games. We have the mental advantage of that now. Is that a real thing or not? I'm not so sure, but I know it was definitely a talking point last year. So if you can spin anything into a positive, I would take it this year. So I feel good about that aspect of it as well. And certainly, I'm looking through orange tinted glasses right now at this entire situation. And I think the reason I'm doing that, I don't know what the ages of everybody in my audience are. If you're younger, maybe you're a little bit hungrier for this, the team to just really go, 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 because this is like what is a competitive Orioles team of your childhood when they were the Buck Showalter years, and then the rebuild, which is relatively quick to being competitive again, now making the playoffs back to back years, and it's just go, 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 let's win the games. Or if you're older, you might have some memory of that 83 World Series run. You have memories of the 90s where the team was good on an annual basis. For me, and a lot of people, myself, Eli, and Jesse, we're all right in the same age bracket. Jesse and I are 31. I'm the middle child of this audience of this podcast. Jesse's a month older than me. Eli is a couple years younger than me. Um, Jesse and I are both 31. I think Eli's 29. We grew up in the age of the Orioles just being a perennial joke of a franchise. I pulled up the baseball reference of the Orioles history. And me and Jesse being born in 1993, yes, the Orioles have made the playoffs back-to-back years in our lifetime, 96 and 97. I don't know about Jesse. I don't know about you if you're born in the early 90s. I don't remember 96 and 97. I wasn't paying attention to sports in that way in 96 and 97. I I know the names, I'm familiar with the teams, was not part of my like baseball enjoying history. I would say that came to be right around 99 2000. And if you look on Baseball Reference at, what kind of happens around the turn of the century for the Baltimore Orioles, it's a lot of years of losing baseball games, a lot of years of not making the playoffs. I remember distinctly how excited I was about the 2005 team for the first half of the season, not even the first half, the first 2 months probably, where they were like crushing it. I think they won like two-thirds of their games early on. Then the bottom fell out. Lee Mazzilli got fired. Um, and the team was dreadful from there on. Now, a lot of years I will say they were not the bottom team in the division. The Devil Rays were horrible, so that was always kind of the saving grace. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to win 72 games and finish fourth because the Devil Rays are going to flirt with 100 losses again. But I also remember later on, I would say the late aughts, the 08, 09. I remember being excited when the Orioles would win enough games to not lose 100 games. Now, the Orioles never lost 100 games in my childhood. They were never that bad. They were never like the worst team in the league, at least not that I recall. But they would lose a lot of games. And I remember like in mid-September when they would get like that 63rd win, I'd be like, oh, yes, like we didn't lose that 100. We're not going to lose 100. It's mathematically impossible. Like, isn't that so exciting? So that's my background, and I recall being so excited for the Buck Showalter years from 2012 to 2016. So this is like my college years where they were competitive every year. And I know there was that stat forever ago from like I guess 2012 through 2016. They were the winningest team in the American League for those years, but never made the playoffs in back-to-back years. Had a gap in 2013 and 2015. Won only one division, the wild card team twice in 2012 and then again in 2016. Went to the ALCS once, but have never won a game beyond the division series. So for me, like, and I talk about this all the time, how it's like colored my not like my understanding or my analysis of baseball necessarily, but like in terms of like appreciating the great ones when you have them. I think I talked about this about Manny Machado a long time ago in reference to like Gunnar Henderson today, is that you don't really know how good the best players are until you get to see them on your team day to day because baseball is so regional and so local. And the team you have the most access to is the one in your backyard. With the Orioles, we have the Orioles and the Nationals. I remember the Bryce Harper days early on a little bit, but I was watching, Manny Machado. Um, Manny Machado was just so good at the plate, in the field, kind of a numbskull on the bases, but in most aspects of baseball, he was really, really good. Gunner is like such another level of that, I think is what I talked about. You don't appreciate that. And I think the same thing applies to like good baseball teams. It's like I didn't know exactly what a good Major League Baseball team was growing up. I remember like my teams had like one or two good players and, Miguel Tejada, Melvin Mora was good. Brian Roberts was really good in his heyday. But in general, like the Orioles were about, oh, like Cal Ripken played for them. Like, and how much are they going to get for Eric Bedard? And is BJ Ryan going to get traded? Those are like, it was like we were the farm system for everybody else. It was like you're going to pick the pieces off that are of value, or like, at the trade deadline, your guy on an expiring contract that's worth nothing, you're going to trade to the Pirates, or not the Pirates, I guess, but the Twins, or a team in the NL East, the Mets, that's going to be good for this year, or whatever. They're going to get your somewhat decent pieces. Then in August and September, you just have like a dreadful array of talent. Maybe you get some September call-ups back when the roster's expanded to 40 and they'd call 10 guys up and you'd be like, oh, this guy's gonna Xavier Avery's gonna be amazing, the next Gold Glove center fielder. That just never happened. That was my childhood of Baltimore Orioles baseball. And I technically was an adult in 2012 when they got good that first time. And then I think I was more comfortable in the losing years. I understand losing baseball teams. Like that's in my heart growing up. I love like the fan favorites guys. I love BJ Surhoff was part of some good teams, but I remember having an affinity for BJ Surhoff in my childhood when he was on some bad teams. Like that's like the part of baseball I understand better because it's just what I grew up with. Um, and I say all that long-winded stuff to say, like, yes, the team has been disappointing in the second half of the season, but they are still making the playoffs. They still might win 90 games. They have not gone to the playoffs in back-to-back seasons since 96 and 97. So for my like sentient years, this is the first time that's happened. If you are under, what's that? If you're under 26, it's the first time in your life that's ever happened at all. I mean, it's a special thing that they're experiencing, and it just because a team's not going to win a division, not going to win 100 games, doesn't mean they're not worthwhile. Of like in 10 years looking back and going like, oh wow, that was a pretty neat team. Remember when we traded for Corbin Burns and he was like flirting with a Cy Young, and remember when uh Gunnar Henderson like was kind of in the MVP discussion for a lot of the season, and just like remember when that era of Orioles baseball really like got us back on the path to being a relevant organization in baseball. That's kind of what I'm trying to stay on the positive there because it's such a long season, and yes, they've had their struggles, but ultimately the outcome here is going to be a very good outcome for the Baltimore Orioles, and we shouldn't look back on the regular season as like this huge disappointment because they weren't as good in the second half as they were in the first half. Certainly, legitimate criticisms abound, but they got to the playoffs. That's goal number one. Wild card or not, they got to the wild card or division title, whatever. They got there. Now you reset and you readjust your expectations for them based on what they do from here. As I just laid the groundwork there, the team is set up now to have a good opportunity in the postseason. They are going to have the pitching set up. The hitters are getting healthy. They're trending up. they should be able to go into the playoffs and win baseball games. I want to look right now at the playoff picture if I can. Um, I'm trying to see. Yeah, let me look at the standings here because I just want to see like kind of the up to date situation here. So the Orioles, if the playoffs were starting today, they would have the Tigers. They would host the Tigers in the wild card round of the playoffs. They are the 4 seed. The Tigers are the 5th seed. So the 5th seed goes to the 4 seed. The Astros would host the Royals because the Astros are the 3rd seed. Royals are the 6th seed. The Astros are locked into the third. We're locked into the fourth pretty much. The Tigers and Royals could still flip flop here. You know, the Orioles right now, I think I would, if you're talking in terms of like momentum, I guess I'd rather see the Royals. The Royals also have a lot more toolsy guys that scare me, but in terms of recent performance and on the road in particular, the Royals are not as good. Um, I think you'd rather face the Royals, so maybe the Royals, they've got the Nationals right now. The Tigers are in Tampa, so that's a better matchup for the Royals than the Tigers have. Maybe the Royals can overcome the Tigers. The only other real monkey wrench there is that the Twins could get in here somehow. I guess the Mariners could too, but the Mariners' chances are a lot lower. They're another half game behind the Twins. The Twins have a chance to squeeze in here, and now that would be relevant to the last series of the season where the Orioles play the Twins for 3 games. There's not really a scenario where the Twins can get in and then face the Orioles, but there's a scenario where the Twins could get in instead of the Tigers or the Royals. I think if you're the Orioles, you'd rather have the Twins in there than the Tigers, but you're not going to lay down the final 3 seasons and let them win games. So it's a tough situation there. But I think right now mentally you have to prepare. They're going to face the Tigers again. They just played 6 games against them the last 2 weeks. Was not great for the Orioles. Went 2-4 against them, but you can beat them. You can do it. And like I said, it's all set up for them. So that's kind of all I wanted to talk about today was just trying to stay positive about it. I think the Orioles have the opportunity here to go on a run. And for me, as a person that grew up with very bad Orioles baseball teams, I'm still very appreciative of what this team is and have hopes that they can go on a run here. And, one final thing is just that this team is set up to still be really good for a long time. Um, no, they might not have Corbin Burns next year. They might not have Anthony Santander. They're going to have Gunnar. You hope Adley's hurt so that he will get healthy and then be much better next year. Colton Cowser looks legit. Cade Povich is kind of impressing me the last month or two. So that's a rotation piece. Bradish will be back at some point. Bradish, Rodriguez, Povich. Maybe you go sign somebody. Eflin. That's a pretty decent 5. Bradish isn't going to be back till mid-season at the earliest. Bautista back in the back of the bullpen. A lot of pieces still be positive about the Baltimore Orioles in 2025 and beyond. And look, they made the playoffs. Let's go do the business now, guys, and go on a run. Rangers did it last year. Weren't that different of a team from what the Orioles are now. There's no reason they can't do it. So let's see them get it done. But that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to go on to believe.com and look for a podcast that you might find interesting. They've got a bunch of sports podcasts. We're on there. They've got baseball, basketball, sports talk, pop culture, college football, NFL. Pretty much if you're into something, they probably have a podcast about it. So go check them out. Also, thanks to our sponsor again, BetOnline. Go over to betonline.ag to get in on the mega contest, and you can pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200K. So thank them, and thank you to the Baltimore Orioles for finally winning a game to get you into the postseason, and you got to have that locker room celebration with the champagne or the Budweiser or whatever it may be. It's always a lot of fun to watch. So thank you for that. And thank you for, giving me an opportunity to talk about baseball in the fall. It's officially fall now. I am in my fall regalia of sweatpants with a space heater in the corner, as it was a chilly 60 degrees and rainy here in the Baltimore area this morning as I record. It's fun to talk about baseball this time of year instead of football, which, like I said, growing up, the Orioles stunk. So usually for me, by mid-August, I was looking at the Ravens schedule and planning out things there. And lately I don't have to do that because the Orioles are a lot of fun again, really good again, and I believe they have a chance to go on a run here if they can get things on the right path here the last 5 days. So yeah, that is it. I really appreciate you all for checking out the podcast. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your audio entertainment. You can also follow the podcast on Twitter at The Warehouse Pod. You can email the show, thewarehousepod@gmail.com. And you can also find us on YouTube. I'll bring us up real quick on the YouTube video itself. The Warehouse Pod. There we go. And there we are. We're at 286 subscribers right now. If we get to 300 by the World Series, that would be amazing. So if you are not already subscribed, head over to our YouTube right now and subscribe to the podcast. But that is all I've got for this episode. I think Eli will be back for you here to maybe preview the playoffs here in just a couple of days. And yeah, thank you all for getting involved and listening. Hope you enjoyed it. And I will talk to you next time. See you.